Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with what, in my opinion, is the absolute worst Tyrannosaurus figures to ever appear in the Jurassic toy line. Now this obviously runs the course of Jurassic Park to Jurassic World when it comes to the entire line of Jurassic from the beginning. I would say, in my own personal opinion, and of course not everyone will agree with this, but these are the single worst T-Rex figures that have ever appeared in the Jurassic franchise, and they are just so disgustingly hideous. You can see these are very clearly the Hasbro Jurassic World T-Rex, but these are specifically the smaller versions of the T-Rex that had released. And you can see there were two different color variants. There was a male green version, which is the only time that I guess unless you count the hybrid version that Hasbro had released, but it's the only time we saw this sort of T-Rex sculpt in greenish tones in the Hasbro line outside of that weird hybrid that they had released. And then of course we have the Rexy version here as well, or maybe since it's with the green Rex, maybe you want to count it as the doe. I don't know. Either way, it's awful. I know that much. So without further ado, let's jump to a closer look and check them both out from there. So we'll begin with the standard brown version, again the Jurassic World T-Rex version, and you can see straight away the head looks terrible. When it comes to the overall likeness of a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World T-Rex, they definitely did not capture it, not even a little bit. Like, when you look at this, it just looks so awful. It's unreal. The articulated lower jaw is also terrible. You can see it doesn't even sit in place correctly. It just looks so ugly. You've got a horrible seam here. The way that it articulates is just absolutely awful as well. Like, there are honestly no redeeming factors of this figure at all. You do have a variation of brown here for the face, and then you've also got some grays that kind of circle around the eye and then stripe down. You can see a little bit of it following along the jawline, a little bit more up here, and then stripes that move over the top of the head. There's also another really ugly seam here moving along the center of the head. And then the skin texture also looks pretty rough. You know, there's not really much to it. It's very generic looking. You can see there is some alternate color there for the lower jaw, so I guess, I don't know if I'd say it's a plus, but at least it's something. The eye is painted with a yellow, given a black slit-like pupil, which is not at all how a Tyrannosaurus should look in the Jurassic franchise when it comes to the eyes, but then again, nothing on this really looks that way. You can see the teeth are all kind of sculpted really poorly. You can see some of them are sculpted together, and the ones that are sculpted individually don't look very good. They're also very sloppy as far as the paintwork goes. You can see the teeth on this side didn't even fully get paintwork. I don't know if it's the same over here. Yep, definitely pretty much the same going on over here. Another thing that's really bad about this is the fact that you can see the teeth are kind of like inconsistent as far as the way they're placed, and it's even worse when you look down here on the lower jaw. You can see how teeth are kind of just like sporadically showing up all over the place here, almost V-Rex like, which makes no sense when it comes to a Jurassic Park style T-Rex. You can see there is a tongue sculpted out there on the inside of the mouth. It does sport a purplish tone, and you can see that the inside of the mouth on the lower jaw also sports that color, and it does have that on the inside of the mouth on the upper side. Kind of generic detail, but there's also another really ugly seam right there as well. As we move back here into the neck of the T-Rex, there is a little spot here of articulation and then one right here, and that's all part of the action feature, which we will see here in a moment. The detailing and everything looks awful back here in the neck. It's really washed out as we lead into the body, in pretty much, I would almost say, typical Hasbro Jurassic World fashion. A lot of the times when it comes to the primary bodies, you seem to get washed out detail overall, and you can definitely see that is the case here on this T-Rex. As you move down into the arms, for some reason the arms are absolutely jacked. This T-Rex looks super muscular. The detail honestly looks probably the best that you see through the course of the body right here in the arms, but still pretty terrible. You've got the fingers sculpted out. They don't look very good. The nails are not painted, but the nails are uber tiny, so I guess I can kind of understand why they wouldn't have bothered. We do, of course, have articulation in the arms forward and back right there. There's one of the dino damage areas on the side of the T-Rex, something that Hasbro loved giving their dinosaurs. And you can see that we've got like the stomach ripped open. You've got some reddish tones in there, and then the ribs are showing, which they are painted out. Not perfectly, but they are painted out. As you continue to move back, the detailing and skin texture continues to look quite generic. Moving down into the thigh, we do have a Jurassic World stamp, so I guess that's kind of okay. But the skin texture looks super strange. We've got massive scales down here in the thigh, which yet again is not at all how a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World T-Rex should look. You've also got some awkward looking like skin stretching here on the knee, and then as you move down, you do have a calf muscle sculpted out, but the detail continues to look super generic. And then moving down into the foot sculpt, like, it looks so silly, so stupid. I don't know what was going on here with this foot. The one toe is even curved. It just looks beyond awkward. We do have nails painted, though, I guess, so that's at least somewhat of a plus, but we did skip the dew claw. Shocker there. The legs do, of course, articulate forward and back, and it is pretty smooth, but it's also a little bit loose, so the figure tends to have trouble balancing, at least mine does. And then as you move back here into the tail, you can see another very obvious articulated joint, and that's because you move the tail to activate the action feature. And when it comes to the articulation back here, like, that's really all you've got. When it comes to back and forth, you can go up and down a little bit better again to activate the action feature, but again, not really that much when it comes to the mobility. As you move out into the tail, you've got some larger scales moving along the back of the tail, super generic skin texture here on the side with a few osteoderms poking up here and there. And then again, the tail does lead out and curve. You do have that lighter tone moving through the course of the entire underside of the T-Rex, which I guess is okay. Not the entire, almost the entire. As you lead out into the tail, you can see it does disappear, but for the most part, they did include that coloration here through the entire underside until you reach about halfway through the tail. And you can see the underside of the T-Rex, which should sport a very certain specific style of scale detail, is non-existent as well. But again, at this point, I definitely, they messed up the entire figure elsewhere. I wouldn't have expected them to have captured that. You can see the opposing side somehow finds a way to get even worse than the first side, which is super ridiculous because the T-Rex's head is kind of just naturally positioned toward us sort of this way. So you would think that this should be the more dominant side, but we now have screw holes, and somehow on such a tiny figure, they found a way to cram 5 screw holes right here in this one spot. That's absolutely unreal that they were able to get that many screw holes right there. So that definitely is not a good thing at all. And then as you move out, you can see the tail does curve toward us in this direction on this side. But overall, like I said, in my opinion, the single worst T-Rex in the Jurassic franchise. And then we also have the greenish variant. Now, the green variant obviously meant to represent a male, which does not show up in any of the Jurassic films until Jurassic World Dominion, but you can see we did have a male Rex in the Jurassic World Hasbro line, and it's pretty much cut and paste as far as this figure goes compared to the other one, except for the fact that we now have different tones of color. We have a green for the primary body, but what is weird is I don't know if it's just due to aging or if this is how it was originally. You can see the green of the tail and the green of the legs, even the green of the arm seems to be slightly different compared to the green of the body, so it sort of makes it look like there's a little variation of color to the figure, which, at least is a little tiny bit of a plus. But outside of that, you can see it does still suffer from all of the same negatives that we were just mentioning for the first figure. There is also an alternate tone of color here for the underside, but it's not much of an alternate tone of color, just a slightly different shade of green. We do have the same style of paintwork, but rather than the grayish tone we had on the other one, we have almost like a mixture of like a dark grayish brown. It's a weird tone of color, but that's what you see on this one. But the same style and same patterning, same design, just different tones of color. The eye also painted the same way with an awkward slit-like pupil. You do have the same colors for the inside of the mouth. Same sloppy paintwork for the teeth. Even over here, you can even see it's exactly the same way as far as the way that the paint has missed most of the teeth, which is super weird. And then again, the ugly screw holes and everything on both sides. So not really much to really go over, I would say, with this one. It's pretty much the same figure as the first version, just now with different tones of color. As far as the action feature goes on the T-Rex, you basically need to use the tail here to activate it. I'm not really sure what a good way would be to show it to you. So you can move the head up and down if you move the tail up and down, and then if you move it left and right, you can see you operate the jaw. So if you do the two together, you basically have like a snapping action feature. But as you can see, there's not really much force when it comes to that jaw snapping action feature. There's also not a whole lot going on when it comes to the movement of the neck, but I guess at least it does move. Oh, wow, look at that one. That one's actually standing if I kind of crouch it forward right there. But as far as a size goes, these ones are really quite small. For a length, you are looking at about 8.5 inches, or around 21.5 centimeters. And then for a height, we'll measure the green one in the position it's standing in currently, about 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. And that, obviously with a figure like this, you could alter the height, make it a whole lot taller if you choose to, because the legs are articulated. But for a size comparison, we have Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovisaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being. And you can see next to these T-Rex, they are pretty small, honestly. Like, the T-Rex are, on top of being the ugliest, in my opinion, definitely one of the smallest versions as far as, like, mainline dinosaurs go, if you don't take into consideration minis or anything like that. The smallest overall, I would say, would be like the 5-inch basic figures from Mattel, possibly, if I'm remembering correctly, outside of like the minis and stuff, but these are also really quite small. And I don't feel like we really need much in the way of comparisons for these figures. They've been out long enough that if you are a Jurassic collector, you've probably seen them, but if not, if you are more of a more modern Jurassic collector, then here is a Mattel Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor, one standing on each side of these figures, and you can see that these T-Rex are actually very similar in size to what you would get when it comes to, like, you know, a Savage Strike type figure from Mattel. So these Hasbro Jurassic World, I think these were the Bash and Biters T-Rex or something along those lines, are really, really terrible. Like, they are overall some of the worst figures, not even just when it comes to the T-Rex. Like, they're definitely my overall vote for the worst T-Rex in the Jurassic franchise, but they're also some of the worst Jurassic figures that have ever existed. Like, there is just so much wrong with these figures. When you look at the skin texture throughout is mostly very generic and does not in any way, shape, or form look like the skin texture you would see on a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World style T-Rex. You can also see as you move through the course of the figure that the proportions are awful, somehow even worse than what you would get when it comes to like Mattel with their clown feet and short tails. The fact that this has a head that is just gigantic, arms that are super awkward looking, and pretty much, you know, like the body looks awkward. Everything as far as the proportions go on these figures look really, really weird. So they did a terrible job as far as that goes. The lower jaw looks rough, just looks really, really bad as far as the way it's articulated. You also have very strange looking teeth, which have more of like almost a V-Rex sort of a look rather than a JP Rex look. The overall likeness of the T-Rex in general doesn't even really look like a JP Rex. Like, sometimes you can get an awful looking figure overall, but at least the head sculpt will look sort of like what it's meant to represent. Not even the case here with these. It just doesn't look like a JP Rex in any way pretty much at all. The paintwork is also pretty generic. There's not much to it. You really only have like a brown moving through the course of the body, a light tone for the underside, a little bit of extra coloration there on the face, and then also the wound has been painted out on the side and the nails, but only of the feet, and only 3 nails on each side. We didn't get the dew claw or anything painted. And again, same goes for both of these figures. The fact that we also have 5 screw holes on one side for such a small figure is also quite baffling to me. The articulation is okay. That works all right for the most part when it comes to like the arms and legs. The action features a little generic and doesn't really look that great, doesn't really work that great, but at least I guess they gave it the action feature you would expect for a T-Rex. So overall, absolute hot garbage from Hasbro. Definitely the worst, in my opinion anyway, Jurassic World or Jurassic Park T-Rex that has ever existed in the toy line. Let me know in the comments section what you guys think of these, and if you are for some reason considering grabbing these, you can find them on eBay, usually pretty easily. So again, check there, and of course like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.